I have been in a clergy study group for about 18 years. There were 5 of us in the group. And earlier this month, we went off on a short retreat at St. Columba's in Inverness, nestled along Tomales Bay. We've been doing this for a few years, and each year we like to spend time, just talking about whatever occurs to us, but always include in our plans talking about Christmas sermons. So one evening, the first evening the group was there, we were talking about what we were going to do, and we agreed that we would take a hike. And the hike was relatively long, from Point Reyes all the way to the ocean, about 9 miles round trip. So the next day we got up, we had breakfast, we talked about whatever we talked about, we got in the car, we got to the trailhead, and we started walking. We walked in the cool, sunny air. The conversation wandered from, diocesan gossip to our Christmas sermons, and how we each wanted to say something that we hadn't said before and hadn't been said after 2,000 years of Christmas sermons. I was walking by one of my colleagues, Sarah, and a comfortable silence settled on us. I was sort of checking to see if my knees were still there, when all of a sudden she said, "Christmas is like fractals. Small is all." Sarah kept talking. They talked about reading the book by Adrienne Marie Brown, Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds. Brown is an author and an activist, and she's focused on radical self-care and justice and liberation. What's interesting about the conversation is that it just kind of went everywhere, including the concept that she puts in this book of small is all. The idea is centered around the importance of small, intentional actions and how they can lead to large-scale social transformation. In addition to being an activist, Adrienne Marie Brown is a poet. In one of her poems, she writes, "Look here. If you can't see the small, you will keep leaping from built thing to built thing, begging the sky to rain only on you. You'll become a tyrant, reaching, shuffling the cards until you see only your own vision, massive, but no one else can see it. If you can't see the small, you miss the whole miracle. It is all moments nearly missed, private, impossible to perform or perfectly acted. Context in all moments of faith hit the surface and change it, shivering us open to love, to our ridiculous longing. The small thing that gathers us tonight, the small thing that is all things, is the story of Jesus' birth. And unlike many such stories, it's not an explanation of how Jesus came to be in the world. It's a story that explains how the world becomes what God longs for. It's not a biography. It's not a linear piece of storytelling that begins with Jesus' birth and just goes on from there. The whole story of Jesus' birth teaches the same concept that Adrienne Marie Brown raises. Small is all. Like every birth story, Jesus's begins at the cellular level. By the time we join the narrative on this holy night, that small cluster of cells has become a baby. The contrast to the great rulers like Augustus and Quirinius, which are named in Luke's gospel. The tiny being claims true sovereignty, not through force, but through something more powerful, divine love. Small is all. Jesus is born in a small village, an historically loaded place where King David's birth, but just really a gathering of a few dozen families. Contrast this with the nearest metropolitan area, Jerusalem, which was a city of tens of thousands, a center of trade, the location of the temple, and the imperial occupation headquarters. Although you might expect an anointed one to be born in Jerusalem, he's born in the countryside. The city has influence. The tiny baby is the author of creation. Small is all. And of course, Jesus' birth is attended by, well, frankly, the least significant members of society. The shepherds find Jesus in a place that is familiar in their lives. They find a baby in the same manger where they might feed their sheep on a cold night. Contrast this with the amount of time and energy put into the birth of a princely child. Although you might expect Jesus' first visitors to be the three kings, they are instead the people of the land. All the kings of the earth have the splendor of extraction economies. The tiny baby is rooted in the hearts of ordinary people. All of these contrasts in the story are not accidental. The details of Jesus' birth aren't just simply sort of decorative additions to the story. The details are the gospel. Small really is all in the Gospels. And this might sound like good news to you tonight if you feel unseen or marginal. But it might sound like profoundly bad news if you place your trust in the powers that try to maintain order, like governments or religions or any of the Christian denominations that claim to be better than others. If you're impressed with bombastic displays of power, Christmas has kind of got to be a disappointment for you. Because power plays and big picture solutions aren't what we hear in tonight's gospel. Even though raw power offers a compelling promise sometimes, too often it is simply a fear-based dodge that just tries to grind down our lives. And yeah, today there are all sorts of fears that we might want to control by some large-scale solution. But if Christmas is about nothing else, it is about paying attention to the small places in our lives where we come to life. Like the small ways that we engage with each other, sharing where we need help, or the ways that compassion erupts in us when we see that another person has need. Holding another person's hand, listening carefully to our neighbors, attending to what the weakest among us thinks. All of these are the work of Christmas. Small is all. And these small connections repeated over and over and over can transform the world. What is the small thing that you seek tonight? What is the small gift that you long to offer? Where do you need to seek out the small thing that is all? Like fractals, right? The pattern of the universe repeats at a colossal scale. Small things generate large things. Transformations that begin in small ways reverberate all the way to heaven. As my clergy group continued to walk to the ocean, I thought about how small is all. And I began to notice the small things around us. The green slug by by the path, the fractalized shape of the fern leaf, the perfect circle of lichen at the end of a redwood stump. All these small things along the way indicated something about our world. The constant shadows where mushrooms grow, the wetness of everything in the lower parts of the path, that bright greenness of plants and trees on the sunny stretches. And then, quite by surprise, at least to me, we were at the ocean, passing across a bridge and through a copse of dying trees. All the small things led us to the vastness of the Pacific. And even there, the small things were all tiny chips of quartz, tough, dry grass, ice crystals, thousands of feet above us making sundogs in the sky. The small human that rests in the major comes to disclose the greatest of mysteries to us, that we are becoming human. As one of my favorite theologians, Walter Wink, writes, this is the revelation. God is human. It is the great error of humanity to believe that it is human. We are only fragmentarily human, fleetingly human, brokenly human. We see glimpses of humanness, but we have not yet arrived at true humanness. Only God is human, and we are made in God's image and likeness, which is to say, we are capable of becoming human. From the manger, the tiny human calls us to embrace the smallness of our nature and the greatness of God's love, so that we may grow into fully human beings. This holy night shows us that it is in the smallest gestures of kindness and compassion, those seemingly insignificant acts, that God's boundless love is made manifest. And tonight, the child in the manger teaches us to embrace that smallness once again, so that he may grow in us, and that we may grow into the fullness of God. Look here. Here.